In a world that often feels disconnected, uncertain, and overwhelming, there has never been a more important time to come back to love. I'm Robyn Vogel, author, psychotherapist, relationship expert, and love and intimacy coach. For over 20 years, I've been sitting with people in their most tender, courageous moments, the heartbreaks, the longing, the walls they've built around their hearts, and the quiet hope that real love is still possible. I created Come Back to Love because I know what it feels like to be capable, successful, and still quietly wonder whether love is truly available to you. This work is deeply personal to me. I've walked this path myself, and for more than 20 years, I've helped others reconnect with the parts of themselves that learned to protect. My mission is simple: to help you remember who you truly are, expand your capacity for love, intimacy, and authentic connection, and create a life and relationship you genuinely love. Through immersive transformational experiences, I support spiritual seekers in reconnecting with their deepest truth and stepping into the lives they're meant to live. This show is a sanctuary, and I welcome you. A place to heal the past, reconnect with yourself, and fall in love again with your life, with others, and most importantly, with yourself. Wholehearted welcome today to Come Back to Love. We are on KMET, your ABC News radio affiliate. Come Back to Love radio show airs in Southern California on KMET 1490 AM and 98.1 FM. I'm so happy you're here. Thank you for returning to the show each week. You'll have to excuse my voice a little bit today. I've been sick for about 10, 12 days, and I'm happy to be back doing an episode for you and with you. And I notice my voice is a little scratchy. So welcome to the show. In a few days, this country will celebrate something we hold sacred: freedom, independence, the right to stand on our own, answer to no one, except maybe our parents, declare ourselves whole and sovereign and free. Flags will go up, grills will fire up, fireworks will light the sky, and somewhere in all of that celebration, I want us to pause and ask a question that doesn't usually come up over hot dogs and sparklers. What does freedom actually mean when it comes to love? Such a big question. So many people talk about this topic, and I'm so happy to be talking about this topic with you today. Be very curious to hear your thoughts. Because here's something I've noticed in the 20 years of doing this work. Many of the people who struggle most in relationships aren't struggling because they don't value freedom. They're struggling because they're confused. They've confused freedom with distance, independence with isolation, self-sufficiency with a wall around the heart. This Independence Day, which is coming up in a couple days, I want to talk about a different kind of freedom, not freedom from love, but freedom within love. Again, I'm Robyn Vogel. This is Come Back to Love. We are on KMET Radio. And today, a few days before we celebrate the freedom this country was built on, we're going to talk about what real freedom looks like in matters of the heart. Stay with me. Let's start with the country itself. The Declaration of Independence wasn't a declaration that says we want to be alone. It was a declaration that says we want to govern ourselves together in community with our own values, accountable to each other. That's actually pretty amazing. I'm going to say that again. The Declaration of Independence wasn't saying I want to separate myself out and be alone. It was talking about governing ourselves together in community with our collective values, accountable to each other. Independence at its founding was never about isolation. It was about sovereignty within relationship, within community. A new way of being in community, not an escape from community altogether, not an escape from relationship. I think about that a lot in my work because I see the same confusion play out constantly in love. There are two very different kinds of freedom. The first is what I'd call freedom from need, freedom from vulnerability, freedom from the risk of being hurt or disappointed or let down. This kind of freedom says, hey, if I don't need anyone, no one can hurt me. If I stay independent enough, I'll never be abandoned because I never depended on anyone in the first place. This kind of freedom might feel safe. It feels strong. It often gets celebrated, actually, especially in women and especially in successful, capable people. We call it self sufficiency. We call it having it all together. Sometimes we call it strength. But this freedom has a cost because freedom from connection is, by its very nature, a freedom that keeps you alone. So take a moment before I talk about the second kind of freedom to just notice what resonated there for you. Are you somebody who has wanted freedom from the risk of being hurt, the risk of being abandoned again, the risk of being betrayed again? You might not use those words like, I want freedom from being hurt, or I want freedom from being betrayed. But in essence, if you're saying, I don't want to get hurt again, I'm not willing to risk getting hurt again, I'm not willing to risk falling in love again, I'm not willing to risk getting married again, for example, you're actually saying you want freedom from these things because inside you feel a sense of freedom that isn't quite accurately identified. So just take a moment to notice yourself. This is all about your own self-inquiry and what rings true for you. Okay, the second kind of freedom is freedom within. This is sovereignty that exists inside a relationship, not instead of it. It's the freedom to be fully yourself while also being fully devoted to someone else. The freedom to need someone without losing yourself. The freedom to depend on another person and still know with complete certainty who you are. This is a big one. A lot of people talk about losing themselves, right? Making decisions to cut off parts of themselves or not be fully themselves because the relationship can't tolerate it or your partner can't tolerate it. So you do something differently because you think they're going to like it better. You think they're going to love you more. You think there's going to be less conflict. But next thing you know, something else happens. So again, this second kind of freedom is freedom from within. It's within the relationship. It's about sovereignty within an existing relationship. It's about being fully yourself, being free to be fully yourself, and at the same time, being deeply connected to someone else. And I think for a lot of people, those things haven't necessarily coexisted, or there's a belief that they can't coexist. This is harder to access as a result. It requires something that the first kind of freedom doesn't. It requires trust. Trust that you can lean on someone and still stand on your own. Trust that needing someone doesn't make you weak. Trust that love and autonomy aren't actually opposites. They're actually partners, which is kind of an interesting thing to consider. Most of the people I work with have built incredible lives around the first kind of freedom. They're capable, independent, accomplished, self-sufficient to a pretty extraordinary degree. And many of them are also lonely in a way that they don't always let themselves feel. Because here's the truth, this Independence Day invites us to sit with real freedom. That real freedom was never about not needing anyone. It was actually the exact opposite. It was about being whole enough to choose connection, not because you have to, but because you're free enough to want it, to be able to do it, to open your heart to connection. The freedom to open your heart to connect. That's true freedom. So I want to take this a little deeper into something I've touched on in past episodes because it's especially relevant this week. There's a version of independence that looks like strength from the outside, but functions as armor on the inside. It sounds like, I don't need anyone, I'm fine on my own. I've built a great life, and if someone comes into it, wonderful, but I don't really need them to. And I want to be careful here because some of that is actually genuinely true and genuinely healthy, right? I said it a little bit, with a tone, but genuinely that it can be very healthy. Knowing you can survive on your own, not making someone else responsible for your happiness. These are real, real important capacities. But there's a version of the same language that isn't strength, it's protection. You can usually tell the difference by asking one question. Does this independence feel expansive and aligned? Or does it feel, I'm going to say, heavy and like a wall, like armor? Armor feels really heavy energetically. So if this is someone, well, it could be someone you know that you hear this from, but if you're actually also saying these words, then you're going to want to tune into what you're telling yourself and ask yourself, is this independence feeling expansive or does it feel heavy and like a wall? Expansive independence says, I am whole and I choose to share my life with you. I am whole and I choose to share my life with you. Protective independence says, I've made myself so self-sufficient that I will never again be in a position to be hurt by needing someone, especially not you, whoever you are. The second one isn't real freedom. It's a very sophisticated form of self-protection that happens to look like freedom from the outside. And here's what's important to understand. This kind of protective independence almost always has a history. Somewhere along the way, and it doesn't have to be dramatic, you learned that needing someone was risky. Maybe you needed something and you didn't receive it. Maybe you depended on someone who let you down. Maybe you watched someone you love lose themselves entirely in a relationship and swore you'd never do the same. So you built a version of freedom that kept you safe. And it worked. It got you here, successful, capable, in control of your own life. But it also may have quietly cost you the thing you actually wanted all along, to be deeply, fully known, and loved exactly as you are, without having to manage or protect or stay one step removed. Take that in for a moment. It's pretty big. I know we talked about it a couple weeks ago. If you ever have anything to say or a question or a response, please feel free to message me directly, Robyn, ROBYN, at comebacktolove.com. And while we're here, comebacktolove.com is where you can learn all about the work of Come Back to Love. This Independence Day, which is coming up again in a couple of days, I want to invite you to ask yourself a real question. Is my independence freedom? Is my independence that I'm feeling about myself, I'm an independent person, is it freedom or is it armor? Is it expansive or is it heavy? There's no wrong answer. That's the thing. There's absolutely no right and no wrong here. It's just all about you being aware of you and you getting to know yourself better so that you can work on the things that you want to work on, that you choose to work on, and that may in fact be protecting you from love, from the loving relationship that you so desire. And this is for you if you're single and stuck and wondering and exhausted and frustrated about still being single, still swiping left and right on the dating apps. And this is also for you if you're in a relationship. Because if you're in a relationship and you're feeling lonely, then you might want to look at this topic of what independence means to you. And if you feel free to be yourself or if you have a wall up between you. Again, there's no right answer, there's no wrong answer, but the question itself is the beginning of something important, self-exploration. So let's explore a little bit more today. What does real freedom and love actually look like? Let me describe it because I think it's important to have a picture of what you're moving towards, not just what you're moving away from. Real freedom and love looks like being able to say, I need you, without it feeling like defeat. We all need each other. We really, really do. I know it has such a bad rap to say, I need, I need. I think automatically there's an assumption like, oh, I'm needy. And then there's judgment attached to that. But we actually do need each other. It's really an acknowledgement of a truth and not a defeat. It looks like having your own full life. This is the freedom in love. Looks like you're having your own full life, your own friendships, your own purpose, your own joy, and choosing from that fullness to build something with another person rather than needing them to complete what feels missing in you. It looks like setting a boundary without guilt. That's a big one. And also like letting someone in without fear. Also a big one. It has a lot to do with trust, right? It looks like staying yourself and who you truly are inside a relationship, not letting go of things that you think are just going to make your partner happy. That's not love. So it looks like not disappearing into the relationship, not performing a version of yourself you think will be easier again for your partner to love. All the while you're shutting down, not being who you truly are, not being genuine, not being vulnerable, because you're trying to avoid conflict or some kind of hurt or disconnection. So it looks like being genuine, being vulnerable, being moved by the relationship, allowing yourself to be changed by your partner and the relationship, opening to them and to yourself and to the relationship itself. So that combination, full on selfhood and full on openness at the same time, is the real freedom this country was actually founded on. Sovereignty within relationship, not instead of it. I think about the people I've watched to do this work over the years, the ones who came in fiercely independent, almost proud of how little they needed anyone. And the slow, often uncomfortable process of learning that letting someone matter to you isn't a loss of freedom. It's the fullest expression of it. It's pretty amazing to think about that. Because here's the deepest truth I've come to in all these years of this work. The freedom to love and be loved fully, vulnerably, without the armor, that's not the opposite of independence. That's the most courageous use of the word freedom, as I've been talking about. Anyone can build a wall and call it freedom, but it takes something far braver to stay open, stay sovereign within yourself, and let someone in anyway. That is real independence. That is real freedom. That is not the absence of need. That's the presence of choice. I know I'm saying a lot here. I hope you have the opportunity to listen again and again to this episode because there's so many juicy nuggets in here. And I know you can find this episode after you've listened live on the radio. You can find it on any of your podcast platforms. Alrighty. Before we go today, let's move into a practice. I always like to give you something to practice. So stay with me for a couple more minutes. I want to invite you to something that could be really, really helpful to work on this topic, especially if you notice that you are someone who has just been really glorifying independence, really proud of how independent you are, really proud of how self-sufficient you are. And yet at night, when you get into bed and you look over to the other side of the bed where there may or may not be a pillow, there's a deep sigh. There's a deep longing, sadness, loneliness, true deep sadness that the other side of the bed is actually empty. Don't you see the disconnection there from the daytime walking down the street feeling confident and tall, confident, independent, capable. And then you get home and you're with yourself and the real vulnerability shows up. So, I want to invite you into a simple practice for this Independence Day weekend. As you watch the fireworks, if you do this week, and I hope you do because they're fun, I hope you let yourself enjoy, first of all, the holiday fully. And I invite you to silently ask yourself one question: where in my life am I using independence as freedom? And where might I be using it as armor? Where in my life am I using independence as freedom? And where might I be using it as armor? And again, like I say every week, you don't need to answer right away. You don't need to fix anything this week. You don't need to fix anything in this moment. Just notice. Let the question sit there, roll it around on your tongue. Let it take up some space. Kind of the way a firework sits in the sky for just a moment before it opens to something bigger. You know how those beautiful fireworks do that? It's the same kind of thing. That kind of noticing, that one honest question, just noticing it actually is itself an act of freedom. Because the people who are truly free are the ones willing to look honestly at themselves without flinching, without defending. That's the kind of independence worth celebrating. So maybe even as you're lying down on the grass and looking up at the sky and watching those fireworks one after another shoot up into the sky, pause for a split second and then open, and then sometimes open again, and then there's just so much beauty. Maybe use that first of all as a metaphor for your own opening and your own celebration of what's possible in your life when it comes to freedom. That it's possible to have freedom inside yourself that isn't armor, but that celebrates yourself in connection with someone else. This is such a great opportunity to really look at what has happened in your life that brought you to this moment, that brought you to these beliefs, and even to notice these beliefs that you might not even have noticed before this episode. So, this is really an invitation for self inquiry. I'm going to read that question to you one more time. Where in my life am I using independence as freedom? And where might I be using it as armor? And then what's possible? What else is possible? That's the next great question. What else is possible? And again, not right, wrong, not good or bad, just something different. If you're looking over at that empty space in your bed and you truly want something different, this is a very important step to take. And I invite you wholeheartedly to take it and take it with me. So thank you for spending this time with me today. I'm Robyn Vogel. This is Come Back to Love. If this conversation about freedom and love stirred something in you, if you recognized your own armor or felt a longing for the kind of freedom that includes connection rather than excluding it, I'd love to connect. As you know, I offer a 30-minute free private conversation, just you and me. You can book yours at comebacktolove.com. This 4th of July, as you celebrate the freedom this country was built on, I hope you'll also celebrate a quieter kind of freedom. The freedom to need, the freedom to want, the freedom to be moved and touched by another person deeply without losing a single piece of who you are. That, my friends, is not weakness. That is independence at its most courageous. I'm Robyn Vogel. Be gentle with yourself today. Love is possible, and it starts with coming back to you. Thank you so much for being here, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Have a beautiful day.